Right now, I'm in somebody else's day room recreation. I sell on the bottom range. The top range is out right now having day room recreation. They're out for approximately 2 hours.
I feel like we are being left behind now because of the way that things are here. We're being left behind.
I think that the law went into effect July 1st, 1996, and I entered prison February of 1994, so approximately 2.5 years.
It's just a horrible system.
And the governor don't want to go against them because they appear soft on crime.
But there wasn't political will across any of the systems to take this on, the executive branch, judicial, or legislative.
This is what they consider rehabilitation. This is what the parole board says. I need more of this, just sitting around, you know, watching my life pass by.
There's a price one pays for exercising one's voice in there and pissing off the powers.
Like they said, ain't no fun when the rabbit got the shotgun.
I try to be optimistic. I try to be positive, but as far as my dealings with the law, I've never really caught any good breaks. I'm not going to say this is the reason why I'm in prison, but I feel that if I would have had a positive male figure in my life, I think that things would have been a little bit different. If I'd have had somebody to really pull me in a different direction, to you know, give me a reality check, you know, wake up, you know, just grab me by the shoulders and wake me up, I think I would have made it. I'd have went to college. I think I would have made it. But my childhood was pretty rough. I moved a lot. Around 1980, we moved to a nice neighborhood on the east side of Cleveland with a person who wound up becoming my stepfather. I lived in between my mother and my stepfather and my babysitter, and I took such a liking to my babysitter, I started calling them grandma and grandpa. They took me in and treated me as a grandson. I spent a lot of time with them, but due to the fact that my mother was a drug addict, I didn't stay at home with them too much. I spent a lot of time with my grandparents. I also spent a lot of time in group homes. I run away from home. You know, my caseworker would just place me anywhere. In 1987, I was sent to Pennsylvania, and I was placed in a residential placement called George Junior Republic. I stayed there for approximately 3 years. When I was released from there, I was sent back to my surrogate grandparents for about a few months. Then I was sent to Elyria when I was in a foster home. I dealt with a lot of pressure from my foster mother. I felt shunned. I felt like she didn't never treat me like one of her own kids. So I had a lot of I dealt with a lot of stress. I focused on playing basketball, and I tried to keep my grades up. I played in the recreation league for the city. I played in a foster home for Elyria High School. I played 2 half seasons. I played in George Junior Republic, but our season was suspended. Our coach, he wound up getting caught with some drugs on the campus, so they suspended our season. I would go to school frustrated, and I would have a lot of problems internally that a lot of people weren't aware of, but I continued to deal with them. But eventually, I wound up self-destructing. I got expelled. Then I ended back up in Elyria again. In my second go around, I played basketball again, and I did a little better this time. My coaches supported me, and they were aware of my situation, so I did a little better the second go around. I got a job, the only job I ever had in my life. I worked at the Cleveland Municipal Stadium. I was a vendor. I was working a job, but I wound up trying to sell marijuana, and I ended up going back out to Elyria joyriding in a car, and I got caught. In 1992, August 1992, I was sent to Cuyahoga Hills Boys School. I served approximately 6 months. While I was at Cuyahoga Hills Boys School, I earned my GED. I played basketball. A guy by the name of Mr. Mackey, he took a liking to me, and he agreed that when I got out of Cuyahoga Hills Boys School that he would help me enroll in college. True to his word, he helped me enroll. I filled out my financial aid. I was on my way to go to Cleveland State. I was in an independent living program, and I was living at the YMCA in an efficiency apartment. My apartment, it was one room, unfurnished. So I started going back to the east side, and I got to hanging out with some of my friends that I knew, and they weren't really the right crowd that I should have been hanging out with, you know, but they were my friends, and I was lonely, and at the same time I was looking for some female companionship. So one thing led to another. One night we were driving around, joyriding, and one of my friends, you know, he came up with the bright idea, you know, let's rob some people. And I knew I shouldn't have been, but wanting to be accepted, I gave in to peer pressure. Next thing you know, I'm trying to rob people with my friends, and this was probably a few days before my 18th birthday, the beginning of March. I was arrested. Several months later, I was bound over to the adult system, and about June or July '93, I was able to, my surrogate grandparents, they posted my bond for me, so I was released on bond. And instead of getting out and just stopping while I was ahead and, you know, reassessing everything and trying to get my life in order, I decided that I was going to continue doing crime. I decided I was going to try to sell drugs for whatever reason. I was never a good drug dealer, probably the worst drug dealer in the history of Cleveland, but I tried to sell drugs. My thinking was that I could make enough money to hire me a lawyer that could get me out the situation that I was in, the legal jam that I was in. But it didn't work out like that. One thing led to another. I ended up getting robbed. Finally, in November 1993, I was arrested for good. When I was finally arrested, I was arrested for committing 2 aggravated robberies and 1 felonious assault. Basketball was definitely a positive influence. You know, for the most part of my life, you know, I strived to play basketball. I wanted to make it in college, you know, of course, go and play professionally, but that never happened. But I'm just a little stressed out right now. I'm leaning towards probably eventually going back to solitary. I'm leaning towards it. Well, I keep getting new cellmates, so every time I get a new cellmate, that's somebody else that I got to get used to living with, and it's just stressful. You know, one cellmate, he'll be okay, or he'll appear to be okay, then a few days later, you see their true colors, and I mean, all the time, I mean, a lot of guys, they're just not into doing what I'm doing. They're not trying to do any legal work. They're not under the old law. we kind of get in each other's way, you know. And I kind of, you know, just like to have my space. I like to read. You know, sometimes I like to read all day, but with a cellmate in my cell, you know, it's hard to do that. I mean, a young cellmate that's not understanding of my situation, and it's always conflict. Every day it's conflict, and I'm just stressed out.
Premature birth is how it all started. Came into this dark and light world east side of Cleveland. A near-death experience, but I kept breathing. Guess it wasn't quite my time for leaving. Never seen my father, he was gone when I was born. The pain from being abandoned had my whole world torn. Group homes, foster homes came into my life quick. Couldn't cope with my mother shooting up that white shit. So now I'm out in the park, playing basketball, trying to fill the void in my heart. But I concealed my pain while trying to be like Mike, and worked on my jump shot day and night. ZO2 style, cause I ain't have no Nikes. But I can move them nets like New Jersey turnpikes. Then it all came crashing down when I lost focus. Got caught up in the streets like I was under hypnosis. Led astray from the sight of money I'd seen. Big Amp, Tremel, and Jermaine getting cream. Then I turned to a menace to society. Fool with a gun, down to rob anybody.
When I finally landed in prison, it was just, I was in a state of disbelief. I was shocked. I couldn't believe that I had went from being on my way to going to college, having enrolled in college, to several months later to being in prison, serving a sentence of 6 to 25 years with three-year gun specification. So I was just in total shock and disbelief. I was depressed. I mean, I hated waking up. I was shocked.
These are red grapes. They're called Frontenac. They're from Wisconsin. They were bred to be cold hardy, and they love the soil here. You see, we have a bumper crop, and they're about a week away from being picked. We know how to prune them. We know how to take care of them. No leaf damage. It's a small vineyard, so we managed to do a good job of turning out quality grapes. Without quality grapes, you can't get quality wine. And these are about ready also. It's really a re-entry project disguised as a vineyard. We hire young people coming out of incarceration, give them a job, we mentor them, but we found that mentoring don't work without a paycheck. And since I'm formerly incarcerated, I can relate to these young people pretty well. I just had to tell a mother recently, well, has a lot of angst over her son is about to go to prison. And he's a young gangbanger. I mean, serious. He's running around with thugs, with guns. So I said, would you rather visit him in prison or in the cemetery? Your choice. Because if he don't go to prison, he's gonna get killed. Within a year or two, he's gonna be dead. That's the life he's chosen. So sometimes prison can be a lifesaver. And you have to look at it that way. I took the prison and made it my university.
I've learned to embrace writing because it's a tool. You know, I'm a much better writer than I am talker. I'm not a good speaker, but when it comes to writing, I'm able to articulate myself and really explain myself. I began writing because I was hoping that, you know, I could improve my financial situation. I could write an autobiography, and then I was hoping that I, you know, could generate some money and put it towards my legal situation. And so I started writing. You know, I felt that I had to do something. Being in prison, I felt that I had to do something. I wrote raps, I wrote poetry, Some of my poetry was on some websites, some poetry websites in the mid-90s. I had no insight about writing, or I just decided to, I was going to try to write an autobiography. So I started writing page by page, and I think I got about maybe 100, 150 pages. I had a nice stack of pages complete, and I got into a fight. And when I got out the hole, my property was missing, so I scrapped writing. I was kind of discouraged.
When I was young, I had an attitude, used to get into fights. But my time in the hold helped change my life. Started reading books, studying like my cell was college. Started understanding life as I increased my knowledge. Watched from afar, seen all the convicts make it happen. That's why I gotta recognize Keith Lamar in his chapter, man. He wrote a book called Condemned, so I wrote one in his footsteps. Give me shoes when I ain't had none, I almost wept. Thanks to Nasia, was on my team from day one. And I got invaluable insight from Hassan. And I gotta give Bill Nichols his due. And pay homage to Robert Richardson too. And Jason D for hooking up my website, FREEJASONGoodlock.org. Drop the mic.
We have 50,000 people in prison today in Ohio. That's an absurd number for the crime rate we have in Ohio. Just an absurd number.
7 prisons to 27 prisons. 8,300 inmates to 50,700, and we're up 350 in a month. Over 600 more than we had last year. And 32 states in this country are reducing their prison population. I don't know if we just enjoy it. Maybe we just enjoy sending people to prison. You ever think about that? Maybe that's something we do. But I don't believe it's rational.
Before the new law went into effect, I've been incarcerated approximately 2.5 years. I think that the law went into effect July 1st, 1996, and I entered prison February of 1994.
In 1996, the state legislature changed the sentencing law basically to get rid of the Parole Board.
There were legislators who were Democrats and Republicans in the Ohio Senate who had a real issue with the Parole Board and the powers that they had. So legislation was drafted to give people definite sentences, and it would be a way to phase out the Parole Board. I'm Damien Calvert, man who was sentenced at 18 years old to 18 years to life for second-degree murder, for killing a man in the commission of a robbery. It was a drug house. You know, he was selling drugs, and took me 18.5 years to demonstrate my redeemability.
They start giving what's known as flat time, meaning that when you got to prison, you knew the date you were coming out. You didn't have to go in front of the Parole Board with an indeterminate sentence, something like maybe 18 years to life. Well, you could do 18 years or you might do life. That's old law.
I mean, that was the failure of the prior indefinite sentencing. It was just these massive ranges of sentence for crimes that didn't cover that kind of scale. I mean, 2 to 15 years. How can the same offense have that kind of range?
When SB 2 was enacted, the legislators tried to tout it as a Get Tough on Crime Act, because back in those days, back in the late 80s and the early 90s, the number one issue that would come up in the polls was crime. So everyone wanted to look tough on crime. Everyone's running for sheriff all of a sudden. If you're running for judge or court of appeals judge or legislator or city council, I'm tough on crime, I'm tough on crime. So they wanted SB 2 to sound like it's tough on crime. So they're talking about now we'll have truth in sentencing. If somebody's sentenced to 10 years in prison, they'll do 10 years in prison. And that's true. But they ignored the fact that under the old law, they would get sentenced to 10 to 25 years for the same offense.
For aggravated robbery, the crimes that I committed, I would have received probably around 12 or 13 years. And being that I got 23 years in, you could say I've served over 10 more years than the new law prisoners. There are guys that are in here who've received 10 years, 9 years, 8 years for manslaughter.
So this get tough on crime law wasn't that law. It's just, you know, sleight of hand by the legislature. Of course, I blame the legislature for this whole mess anyway.
There wasn't political will across any of the systems to take this on. The executive branch, judicial, or legislative didn't want to take it on. The crime rate of the 80s, the fear-mongering of the news, the racial bias that infests the system, we did these incredibly long sentences that aren't what we see today as necessary for the same crime. Well, we should go back and fix that.
There were rumors going around that when the new law came in that it was going to be applied retroactively, and that when we went to our first parole board hearing that we would automatically be released, but that proved to be just a rumor.
They had a staff that put together the whole recommendation for Senate Bill 2. They recommended it be made retroactive. The legislature didn't make it retroactive.
Truth in sentencing had much more vengeance involved than justice in terms of its selling points.
Especially after Senate Bill 2 went into effect in 1996, suddenly the parole board starts keeping them for 20, 25 years.
Older guys, the guys that knew about the law, you know, they were saying that, you know, we were going to be we were going to probably be able to be kept years longer than new law prisoners. So, I mean, hearing about that, you know, it was upsetting news. It was upsetting news, depressing.
In much the same way we treated crack different from cocaine powder, and everybody finally went, really unfair. Let's bring them to the same level and then go correct everybody that got wronged because of the implicit bias that crack was somehow the worse. Well, no, it was just associated with a minority ethnic group that we chose to continue to double down on our history of mistreatment.
I compare the disparity to the crack cocaine versus powder cocaine sentencing disparity. You got two classes of people who committed the same crime, and yet they're serving disproportionate sentences.
You know, I was a sitting judge when SB 2 was enacted. It went into effect on July the 1st, 1996, and it seemed strange from the get-go that we had two sets of laws now.
It created two classes of inmates, and as an old law inmate, it was very hard.
The system refuses to acknowledge that difference is dangerous. It's horribly dangerous. It's no way to run a prison system. It causes great danger for the guards, for the inmates.
A lot of fights with the young guys also as well. And us older guys, you know, we're not looking for fights. That was the main thing, is getting in fights, being around those young guys and everything, jeopardizing your safety, basically with the cellie. I've seen that also. Some guys get killed by their cellies.
Now you have some new laws that's like radical, like, you know when they get out, so they'll tell the guards, fuck you.
You have inmates who get frustrated at one thing and they take it out on another inmate that they have an old beef against, because anybody on parole now has to walk a much cleaner line than somebody doing flat time.
They know when they're going home. They can get in all the fights they want, break the rules, go to the hole, providing they don't catch an outside case, they go home on that day. An old law guy under the parole board, he get in a fight with one of them dudes, split their head or whatever, he go to the hole, do the whole time. When he go up to parole board, you got failure to adjust issues. You're still a violent person. Oh, well, why you didn't tell the guard?
they might get issued a conduct report, but a conduct report, it doesn't affect them because they don't have to go to the parole board. When their out date comes, they're going home regardless.
But the gentleman on parole now has to go explain his behavior to a board who really cares less about who was the cause of the fight, just sees that you still continue to commit violent acts in prison and doesn't grant you parole.
In 2013, while I was being housed at the Trumbull Correctional Institution, I was assaulted by 2 prisoners, and I defended myself. And later on that day, I fought one of the guys that was involved with the first assault. This resulted in me going to the hole, and this was another bad mark that was on my record. For us,
one hole shot, we get time for it. I don't care if you go back to the parole 7 years after that hole shot, they can use that against you.
The parole board definitely sees the conduct report.
Now, fortunately for me and some of the other old law, we had a lot of their ear because we know how to speak them, and we had respect. And as I shared with you, I was in the hole a lot. You know, I stabbed my cellmate and fucked him up, so I had a reputation that follows you in the prison.
Some of them, they try to exploit the fact that I'm trying to stay out of trouble. I call it nitpicking. You know, they'll just see how far they could go. A lot of them, you know, they don't really want to push me over the edge, but they like to just see how far they could go just out of spite.
I didn't want to deal with it, so I was very strategic in not even having all that tennis shoes and all that shit they want. My thing was books.
I have to basically walk on eggshells, and it's like navigating my way through the jungle, and I'm a gazelle. I mean, I call it the invisible chess match. I have to play chess every day and navigate around all kinds of new law prisoners who are, many of them, they're quick to get into fights, you know, and whereas I can't even really defend myself in this environment. If I do, I'm going to be issued a conduct report. Then when I go to the parole board, they're going to use that against me.
You know, here you are, man, and you've done everything you can to go home. You've stayed out of trouble. You did the programs. And not only do they keep giving you more time, now you're forced to do time with a guy who has a similar case to yours and only has, 8 or 9 years. And he knows when he's going home. And here you are in your 17th and 18th year. And not only do you gotta suffer his ignorance and bullshit, but you also have to live with the knowledge that this dude did damn near the same thing you did, and he might get out before you.
When I was eventually transferred to the Ohio State Penitentiary, I met some of the individuals who were in the Lucasville riot, most notably the Lucasville 5. A guy by the name of Sadiq Abdullah Hassan, and there was a guy also on death row named Keith Lamar. He now goes by the name of Bomani Shakur. In 1993, there was a disturbance at the Southern Ohio Correctional Facility in Lucasville, Ohio. There was a lot of tension between blacks and whites. The administration was trying to force known white supremacists to cell with radical blacks, so there was a lot of tension, and they wanted the Muslims to do the tuberculosis test, but the Muslims, they didn't want to submit to the test because the particular test that they were using, it contained alcohol. Hassan, he was the imam at the time. The Muslims agreed that they would do a peaceful protest. The protest is spilled out of control, and other prisoners, they hijacked the protest and turned it into something else, and it became violent. A correction officer got killed along with, I believe, 9 prisoners. The administration, they were looking to punish whoever was responsible. Hassan, being a leader, they had a bullseye on his back. He was convicted, and he was sent to death row. And he's been on death row since, I believe, 1994. And around, I believe it was May 2005, I was assaulted by an officer, and I was placed in C block segregation. As soon as I got in my cell, I pulled my sprinkler, and they moved me from segregation over to a strong cell in a regular block, which Hassan was housed in. So he celled like 2 or 3 cells down from me. When I first went in there, I was kicking and banging on the door. He came out on the range, and then I spoke to him in front of my cell. He was trying to get me to just basically stop going off. I calmed down momentarily, but it was a process, because after that, the officers continued taking my food trays and things of that nature, destroying my property, so it was a process. The older guys, you know, they gave me reading materials, and I started reading. That was really my introduction into reading. Some of the books, Elaine Brown. Yeah, I remember that vividly. That's Elaine Brown. The book was called The Taste of Power. She was a former leader of the Black Panthers, as a matter of fact, while Huey P. Newton was in exile. He introduced me to that book. I remember I was in the isolation cell, and I read the book, and I had got mad. Something happened with the COs, and I was trying to get back at them, and I remember I tore the book up, and I threw it on the range, and Hassan, he was upset with me that I tore her book up, and, you know, I didn't understand at first, like, why would he be mad that I threw a state book on the range, but he was more or less upset that I destroyed something that could benefit somebody else. He would say, get your Malcolm X on, cultivate myself, change, leave my past behind, and evolve and become somebody, become productive. What really got me into writing, it was the guys that are around, you know, they were working on projects, they were doing interviews, so they were always, you know, talking about writing, and they would talk about black history and politics. It was a real quiet atmosphere for the most part. It could get loud sometimes when certain individuals entered the block, but for the most part, it was a real laid-back, serene type atmosphere. A lot of the guys, you know, they were on death row, and they were going through difficult situations, so I just tried to, you know, fall in step with what they were doing. You know, although they were prisoners and they were on death row, I still looked at them as, you know, actually positive role models. I mean, I wanted to be accepted by them. I kind of looked at them as like big brothers in a way. I mean, I just decided to give it another crack. Being that I already tried to write an autobiography, I basically decided to write an autobiography, but it's dressed up as a novel. I used my story for the plot of my book. In my situation in real life, I committed 90% of the crimes, but it's a novel, it's a work of fiction. I use writing as a tool to communicate with people, but I also figured if I could become a published writer that, you know, perhaps the Parole Board, they would recognize that, okay, this guy, he's had some essays published on the internet. I had one time I had a small story published in the Calling Post newspaper, a local Cleveland newspaper, and with my book, you know, I thought that they would see that as an accomplishment, you know, see that as, they would recognize that as me wanting to do something productive, and as opposed to, you know, getting out and being a criminal, continue to be a criminal. But so far they failed to recognize my writing talents. I really was more or less just reflecting back on Frederick Douglass' situation, somebody that was going through a situation that was way worse than mine, and I just figured, you know, if he could go through his situation and go on to become a statesman, rise up from being a slave, that I could overcome my situation, you know, being in a cell with seemingly no hope. I was actually also inspired by Donald Goines. I just, you know, I never really mentioned, but Donald Goines, I read his autobiography, and I wanted to do something that would be looked upon as something good.
To become the person that I was always meant to be, an inspiration of hope for all those in poverty, self-educated street scholar from the gutter, extending help to the youths like a big brother, the vibrant spirit of Marcus Garvey reincarnated, sharing my life lessons so somebody else can make it, giving back like Michael Jackson the Great, trying to put food 3 times on 7 billion people's plates. It's enough in this world for everybody, but the parasitic banks want it all. Now that's bank robbery. I'm trying to do all that I can to spread happiness to every child, woman, and man. But first, I gotta get back to the land. Maybe then I might be able to shake LeBron's hand. Jim Brown and Kyrie's too. Yeah, you know I can't forget about Uncle Drew.
April 12th, 2013, my cellmate's TV got stolen, and one of the officers, they tried to speak to me about the incident, and I let them know that I didn't have anything to do with the incident, didn't know anything about it, and I didn't want to speak to him. Now, at the time when my cellmate spoke to the officer, they were shaking down the block, looking for the TV, and everybody was in the uproar because other people were losing their contraband, items that they probably weren't allowed to have, but people were losing things that they wanted to keep, and I didn't want to have any ties to being responsible for that happening. So I didn't have anything to say. So I went to the door. I told her, basically, leave me out of that. I don't have nothing to do with it. My door came open. A male officer named Newbacher, he told me to get on the wall. Under the back of my cell, put my hands on the wall. I did exactly as he said, and when I did it, he sprayed me. He sprayed me with mace, with chemical agent. And after that, approximately 5 more officers entered my cell, and they all start punching me. They wrestled me down to the ground. One of the officers hit my head against the bedpost. Then, after I was handcuffed, they continued to assault me. After that, I went to segregation, and after being in segregation a few days, they actually offered me a deal to let me out the hole if I pled guilty. I refused. Then when I finally went to the hearing, the chairman of the Rules Infraction Board, he looked at the surveillance video of the incident where the officers had to use alleged use of force against me.
Today's date is May 6, 2013. I'm NCRIB case number 2373. State your name and number for the panel.
Jason Goudlock, number 284561.
Goudlock, you're charged with violating Rule 21 and Rule 20. Disobedience to direct order, physical resistance to a direct order. Supporting facts are on the above date. I, Officer Blankenship, went to cell 236 to talk to inmate Collins and his cellie Goudlock. This officer gave inmate Goudlock several direct orders to step out. This inmate did not comply. Inmate Goudlock began yelling and kicking his door, stating to this officer, "I don't give a fuck, I'm from a supermax." Once I opened the cell door, inmate Goudlock kicked the cell door open, and Officer Newbacher gave this inmate a direct order to step to the back of his cell. Inmate did not comply. He turned and approached Officer Newbacher in an aggressive manner. At this time, Officer Newbacher applied a short burst of OC. Inmate was cuffed and secured in his cell. Shift was notified. Goudlock, you have the right to be heard in your own behalf, but be advised if you are found to be untruthful to the panel, you can receive another conduct report. You could also receive loss of good time. Are you aware of this?
Yes.
What do you have to say?
I ain't disobeyed a direct order. I just told the lady, Miss Blankenship, I didn't want to speak. I didn't have nothing to say. Next thing I know, my cell door came open. They told me to go to the back of my cell. Somebody banged me, and they jumped on me.
Okay, you requested the charging official. Could you state your name and number, or your name and position here at Mancy, please?
Officer Blankenship.
He wants to know if he kicked the cell door open.
Referring to when? What ticket was this?
This is an incident that occurred on 4/12/2013 in 3 Delta and 3D.
Is that what my ticket stated?
Did he kick the door open or did he not kick the door open?
Yes, I read that in my ticket, yes.
Okay. Did he approach Officer, who was that, Newbacher, in an aggressive manner?
Yes.
And then what happened after that, after the inmate was sprayed?
Well, and then on my incident report, on the conduct report, we cuffed him, sprayed, and then we cuffed him, and then he was escorted by Lieutenant Boyd.
Did any officers punch or kick Goudlock after he was sprayed?
I didn't see what the other officers was doing.
You did not observe him being punched or kicked, you said?
No.
You have anything else? Okay, thank you for your testimony.
All right.
The panel feels it's not necessary and really don't require the testimony saying that you don't or you didn't kick the door open. I think the video's pretty evident that that did not in fact occur.
Yeah, I just looked too. So I don't know what
No?
you're talking about. Maybe it's
Okay.
next week, so.
Step out while we discuss the conduct report.
All of my
Okay, after discussing the conduct report, I'm gonna recommend finding guilty of a Rule 2021, 7 days DC credit time served SC in 412 out 418. Panel,
Agreed.
you have a right to appeal panel's decision. Would you like an appeal slip?
Yeah.
That should have, proven everything that the officers were lying right then and there, but it didn't. I decided to file a civil lawsuit alleging that my civil rights were violated. I sued Officer Blankenship, who was the correction officer who wrote the conduct report, who has the conduct report on record stating that I kicked my door open, and knowing that it was a lie, and I also sued the other officers involved. Right now, I'm at the summary judgment stage, which is a critical stage. It's a stage where basically the judge is making a ruling to decide if my case needs to go to trial. Before the judge makes the ruling, the judge gives the case to a magistrate judge, and my magistrate judge, she recommended that my case go to trial. She said that there was a genuine dispute, being that I stated that the officers assaulted me after I was handcuffed, and the officers stating that they didn't do it. I don't really like being in isolation. I consider isolation the lesser of the two evils.
It's overly used. It's instead of being as a last resort, sometimes it's a first resort. And we overuse it in this country up and down the spectrum. I mean, we're doing it with grade school kids now, placing them in solitary.
No, my God, it'd be, I don't see how anyone could stand to be in prison, let alone solitary.
And that was one of the most challenging, the most life-changing moments in my bit, I believe.
It makes some weaker, it makes some stronger. It's according to how mentally strong you are.
The first time I went to isolation was in 1994 Once I was transferred to the Southern Ohio Correctional Facility in 1995, I got used to being in a single-man cell. I didn't have to choose to be in isolation. The penitentiaries that I was being housed in, most of the penitentiaries, they were single-man cells. From 2002 to 2012, I spent a total of 10 years in segregation, in isolation. So it's been very hard for me to cell with a cellmate.
I understand that draw because when I first went to medium security, I said, man, I'm exposed. Somebody could split my head. But I challenged that also. Like, why would I want to stay close when medium represents more freedom?
It basically came down to this. If I stayed in isolation, I could sit back and do productive things, read, write, and work on my freedom, you know, reaching out to people, you know, doing my legal work.
I became a writer by being in solitary. Yeah, absolutely loved it. Didn't have to deal with anybody. They brought you your food. I mean, so didn't bother me at all. Other people, it can have an extremely deleterious effect. It can psychologically damage you.
Where I was at in Lebanon, we had cellies in the hole. And this guy, he helped me learn how to write a proper letter. Taught me how to box. You know what I mean? There's so much that came from just 4 months to 120 days in the hole.
But for guys like Jason that choose to do their time in it, they're broken in many ways. It don't matter how smart, because you become very self-reflective and introspective in there, and you evolve very keen insights into things, into your condition, into general conditions, you know, in there. However, you know, you slip sanity-wise. You know, you may seem sharp and crispy in this aspect, but put you in a social context, you're a different animal.
When I went to isolation, I didn't adjust to it good at all, and I was causing a lot of the officers problems, banging on the doors, flooding the range. You know, I was still young, and I had only been in prison approximately 6 months, if that. So I hadn't really adjusted to being locked up. So I was acting out.
You get a tendency to speak to yourself, because when you're in a hole, you do a lot of speaking to yourself and making your own noise. And so for those of us that been in there, our measurement is when you start answering yourself back.
I don't like that. The noise is very noisy, very loud.
It was like, I don't want my whole bit like this, because I would listen to the guys screaming and cursing out their cells and cussing the guards out. And
a lot of guys, they do what's called cell warring, which is basically a person, they'll just start an art, they'll hit on your wall, and if you answer them, they'll call you out your name, start an argument with you.
Another guy, he would throw feces out his cell. Another guy would stick his penis out and shake it at everybody. And
if you don't answer them, they'll still call you out your name. You know, guys, they'll bang on the wall nonstop for hours at a time, trying to get a rise out of you.
One guy they called Preacher Man would preach through it.
They'll blow your power. They'll stick something in the electrical socket, and it'll cause your light to short circuit and go out, so you won't be able to read. You know, you won't have any light, so that becomes a problem.
And I was like, man, I don't want to end up like this. So that really changed the trajectory over my incarceration, and I was born in. As far as this person I ultimately become, I was born in bits and pieces, but it was at that moment that I was literally broke down, suicidal, 1 minute, not in the cut my wrist way, but in a make them kill me way, just ready to go out.
It allowed me to sit back and think, because I've really never been the type of prior to being locked up, I never was really the type of person to sit back and really apply myself and think about things. I was really a very impulsive, hyperactive type person. While I'm in the general population, I can't get away from new law prisoners. I have to deal with them. I'm forced to deal with them.
That's why some of the old law guys are like, I don't want to be in medium prisons, because close security prisons, there's still more of a honor toward rank and station. It's less so than it was in the past, but there's still that. Medium prisons, that shit is all out the door.
Isolation, I would say, it helps me. It allows me a chance to sit back and think and read.
I learned to write in solitary, so it didn't bother me. But it's not something you want to wish on anybody, because being devoid of, humans are social animals, and to be devoid of human contact can have an effect. It's no two ways about it.
If I was to go into the general population, I feel that I wouldn't make it. I feel that I would wind up getting in trouble, getting in a situation where I would end up possibly catching some more time and surely getting flopped at the parole board again.
See, one thing, prisons are a microcosm of society. Things go on in society, goes on in there, albeit in deformed ways.
Prison employees, parole board members, they feel that if you can't adapt to living around people in prison, you won't be able to adapt to living around people in society. But that's not really true, because in society, if I was to get aggravated by somebody, I can easily just walk away.
Him having been in solitary like he has, that's part of the problem and reason why he's unable to negotiate those different personality types.
It makes you less approachable, because it makes you always like this, or you know what I mean. You always got your face like, man. It just. I don't know if you. I don't want to say hardens you. I want to say that it makes you aggressive. It makes you a little bit more aggressive, because when you sit in there and you think about everything that is happening, not just to you in here, but to your family out in the streets, to your kids, to, you know what I mean? You got so many different things that's going on at one time that it causes you to really bear down and become aggressive and really angry, hateful.
Yeah, you'd think that'd be, mine would be totally scrambled eggs after a few weeks of that.
You have to put yourself out there in those dynamics, have conversations, because coming home, you're gonna have to have conversations with your family, with the powers, with people who are the gatekeepers to the opportunities that you're seeking. People who are, one relationship or one network away from a good opportunity.
I would rather, at the end of the day, have some type of peace, have my sanity, and not be upset than be in population and be upset, aggravated. I mean, waking up angry, going to sleep angry. I mean, it's just extremely stressful.
Solitude is my friend, because I don't want to be in a cell with a man that I'll wait till I go to rec and read my mail. That might make me want to have to touch his jaw. Now I'm getting flopped because I'm under the old law. Yeah, I gotta see the board while he's getting released and then be acting like judge, prosecutor, and state police. Instead, man, I'd rather sit in a one-man cell. Read, write, work out. Hope I get some mail, because I know what I'm up against. And as an old law prisoner, I gotta go with what makes sense. Because if I don't, I'm gonna end up sitting in here forever. And that's the situation I wanna be in. Never. Too much stress in the general population, so I turned my back to it all, trying to face the nation.
In September 2014, prior to going to my 5th parole hearing, I mailed a letter to the Ohio Parole Board. I pointed out several reasons why I should have been given a parole at my upcoming hearing. At the end of the letter, I made a lighthearted comment that I really would like to get out to see LeBron James win the championship for my hometown team. I posted the the letter online, and the Smoking Gun picked it up from off of my website, and the story kind of went semi-viral. It was published in Washington Post, the Akron Beacon Journal, Fox 8 Cleveland News, and TMZ.
I knew a couple guys who had attempted murders who were into their 20th year. And it made me nervous when I go into parole board, because I'm like, they didn't even kill nobody.
I don't have anything against the new law guys, you know, that are serving less time than me. But what's upsetting to me is the fact that the parole board, they pretend that the law is not disproportionate.
Now that you got these people sitting in prison, they see someone coming in for the same offense, and they're going to do a maximum of 10. This guy's already been there 10 years, and this new guy's going to be out before him. Obviously, it wasn't fair.
Because the parole board wants to be in charge. They have more unbridled discretion than any other state agency in the state of Ohio.
Because the parole board has what is known as quasi-judicial power. That quasi-judicial power is what is killing us in here, because they have an unwavering power. It's based upon discretion. And that discretion is gone so far out of bounds that it just doesn't make any sense anymore, because you got people doing 8, 9, 10 years for change of address.
They gave me 5 years of the parole board, and I'm thinking like, man, when I go back up to the parole board, are they gonna give me a parole? And if they give me a parole, are they gonna take it from me? Because they can take it from old law inmates.
It was other guys who had went to the parole board, and they were getting screwed over. So I figured, you know, it was definitely going to happen to me if it was happening to them.
Prosecutors and wardens are promoted to the parole board.
The jobs at the parole board are very lucrative for not doing very much, so they found ways around the new sentencing structure to keep themselves in business.
State car, you know, we're talking anywhere between $80,000 to $120,000 a year. Not to mention, you know, the God factor piece comes with having that level of authority.
I wasn't scheduled to go to the parole board until 2007, and then so that was 11 years later.
The only way to fix it is to do away with the old law and bring them into conformity with the new. To give them, and which means a lot of them will be released. But then again, the parole board would never go for that.
You're asking them to give up $80,000, I think, $80,000 a year jobs for basically doing nothing. So are you going to vote to cut your job off? No, you're not. They have a financial incentive to keep the parole board going, how they make their living.
Do they have incentives that may not be perfectly aligned with what the job duty is? Sure. Do we point those out? Of course.
A lot of the prisoners said, well, it's a job protection thing. As long as they got us here on indeterminate sentences, they still have a job to do. And I think there's a lot of truth to that.
All organisms are self-protecting, and it's a self-protecting organism.
When I went to the parole board in 2007, I knew I was going to get a flop. I knew I was going to get flopped my first time up, and I got 3 years.
2015, the stats, there was 1,128 hearings, and only 78 got a parole at the full board. First board hearing, none. Central Office Board Review, none. The old law, the guys were in there and they were getting more paroles than they are today.
The second time, I started thinking that I was going to possibly be paroled. I went before a panel with a parole board member named Miss Kovacs. She told me that if I stayed out of trouble for a year, that she would recommend that I be paroled. So that was encouraging news.
The hardest part to try to challenge is the parole board.
This office has sued the parole board in class actions twice. We've taken that fight on and will continue to do so if necessary.
Because the parole board is not willing to get in accordance and say that everybody who comes in front of them is to be treated equally. They're not being treated equally. We're being treated, as far as old law, as being penalized and punished 3 and 4 times the amount of time that a person under the new law can be punished for anything.
The board that I went in front of, it only had 2 members on it. It was Miss Kovacs and another gentleman. I don't know his name, but he also recommended that I be released. A year went by. I came back to the parole board, and she stayed true to her word, and she recommended that I be released. Now, after that recommendation, the parole board's oversight board, the Central Office Board Review, they overrode the recommendation, and they gave me a continuation of 15 more months.
There are cases you look at and go, I don't get it. Why'd you flop him again? You told him 5 years last time. He's done perfect time for those 5 years, and you flopped him again. That doesn't make sense to me. And we do see that, and those are frustrating beyond belief. You're like, I wish I were a fly on the wall in the back room and I knew what the real reasons were, because it worries me what they might be.
After I did the 15 months, my thinking was that when I came back up, I was going to automatically be paroled. I stayed out of trouble. I got my security status lowered. When I returned back to the parole board for the 3rd time, I was given 2 years.
Anytime I go in and I was given 36 months, and then during those 36 months I get a charge, and then they change that violation and say, okay, well, that's no longer a tech violation, now it's a PV re. And then they say, well, we're going to give you an additional 3 years on top of the time that you just did. When I go back in, they're probably going to say, you ain't done enough time, give us another 2 or 3 years.
Last, I had built up a lot of support. So when I went to the parole board, they gave me a parole. Then I think 13 days before I was to be released, they took my parole. Because if you're an old law inmate and your victims or your victim's family protest your release, you get what you call a stop release. It's automatic. Your release is stopped, even though nothing has changed from your suitability from when you went up.
But it was the Central Office Board Review. I never got to actually meet any of them or talk to any of them. So this was done behind closed doors, and I don't know why they said that. I think on their decision sheet, I think they said the nature of my crime warranted me to be kept in prison longer.
If you told him 3 and come back because you felt like his crime needed to do 3 more, and he did perfect time, and we've had those cases. That's frustrating, beyond frustrating, because it delegitimizes the system.
It's a sad commentary when you have men and women who have done the time that you asked, done the things that you asked, who go up to the parole, get 5 years, 3 years, 2 years, and then go back up and get 3 years.
You have players in the system who also have a complete opposite view of the board. There are prosecutors here in town who claim, oh, they let everybody out. Wow, that's not what the evidence shows. And they don't revoke anybody. Again, not what the evidence shows. There's huge numbers of revocations going on. In fact, the greatest reentry number are revocations.
I did go to some parole board hearings that were held in the prisons. They invited me. They wanted me to see how fair it was. Of course, I don't know what cases they happened to line up that day that I'd happened to see.
I see these guys, And I'm like, why they still here? A lot of the stuff I learned from Sam Webb, who is still incarcerated, who taught me how to run an organization, the JCs, and gave me the skill set to start the NAACP. Wayne Farrell, who I work with in the Heart to Heart program, who taught me the dynamics of public speaking by observing him and then having to go through those very hard critiques where they spared nothing. And they're still locked up.
My brother Russ, this is a guy that I've been with since 1994 when I came in at 18, 19 years old. This guy has become a master plumber inside of the penitentiary system. He is certified in steam plant operations. This man has had one ticket in 25 years. He goes to the board and they say, you don't have enough programming. Give us 3 more years. What more can this person do to show that, you know what I mean, he has changed? He's got a certification by John Kasich. What more does this man have to do? He has kept a penitentiary running, the whole plumbing system inside of this penitentiary I'm in right now. He has kept it running for 8 years now, by himself. But he receives no recognition from a discretionary entity known as the Parole Board.
Wayne Farrell's a double major. Psychology, sociology, bachelor's degree when they were still giving degrees in prison. Nick Perryman, his degree is in English. Very good writer, articulate. Still locked up. He ain't that 17-year-old. So, and now you got guys with similar cases to them who have came down, went home, come back for infractions, and are out again. And these guys are still being linked on by the administration for program content because these guys here are very smart, smarter than their trank facilitators. And you keeping them in there, and there's a theory now that like they're not gonna let them go because they're too much of an asset to the institution.
They're moving guys who know carpentry, drywall, electricians, plumbing, and they're about to take these guys and move them from institution to institution to do these jobs. That way they can keep these places up, keep them up and running. What you think that's the only place that you can use them at? Use them like you're supposed to. Get you 6 guys in here who are master plumbers, man, and set them loose on the city of Columbus and let them fix every plumbing problem we have.
When I returned to the parole board for my 4th hearing, a guy by the name of Mark Hulk, he was sitting on the parole board, and what's significant about this is that Mark Hulk, he used to be a warden at the Ohio State Penitentiary while I was there, and during this time while I was a resident there, an inmate that is, he had got caught trying to frame me and several other inmates for vandalizing a service elevator, which we later found out contained his customized motorcycle. So when I first seen him, I was just completely shocked, but I kept my composure. I didn't want to show that I was rattled by his presence, but when I seen him, I was pretty sure that I wasn't going to be getting released or recommended to be released. When everything happened, the state trooper, a guy by the name of David Simpson, he came back and told me that that they were lying on me. He knew that I didn't pull my fire sprinkler, which they said I did to cause the elevator to malfunction. They said it had water damage, but he told me that he knew that they were lying on me. So I received 24 months at my 4th parole board hearing, which Mark Harp was a part of.
I watched guys go up to the parole board 10 years. I watched guys, it was so bad that they had the psych department on alert. Some guys would have such a terrible reaction at the parole board and flip out. They have posted guards there ready. Psych is notified because all the guys that they were given 10 years to, they would refer them to psych services. They would need some type of counseling.
The guys, lifers were asking me, why are you so happy? I said, I'm on Prozac, you know. I said, we could all be happy here if we wanted to be, you know, and everything. And they're like, no. They were scared to death to go to mental health because of the Parole Board.
And those who didn't have those soft skills to be able to negotiate those conversations, and they're just frustrated. And you know, and it's like, well, what the fuck can I do? I can't do nothing. And that's when you started seeing a lot of guys who refuse to go to the parole board. It's their parole time. It's like, fuck 'em, I ain't going. Put me in a hole. Who would ever thought that would happen?
Am I in North Korea in a cell or Ohio? The place where killer cops telling lies goes viral. The place where the Attorney General likes to look the other way. The place where CEOs set up prisoners every day. The place where old law convicts get treated like slaves. The place where they got 20 million laws for crimes done the same way. And I swear, man, this don't make no sense. And they wonder why we feel like hitting the fence. And they wonder why I write words that be so tense. I'm saying I want to be free, like Sean Hartwell, so I can relax my mind and get my heart well. Find a soulmate, make a few book sales, and struggle with the world, man, until we all well.
The huge failure of the new law is it incentivizes zero change. Truth in sentencing is about punishment. And I don't disagree that our prison system has to be about punishment, but it's also got to be about rehabilitation. Otherwise, we're just saying that we're willing to suffer more crime in the future upon their release. That's what the decision is. We're just delaying crime for our kids.
This is not rehabilitation. This is not corrections. This is just punish, 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 and we'll get paid. And it's like human farming as far as I'm concerned.
Yes, I think there are great ways to incentivize behavior modification. And what we know is carrot stick works. You can't do carrot or stick.
They have no carrot anymore, you know? They had a stick, now they don't have either one, so.
They don't have to do anything except a re-entry class at the very end. Like pre-release class is what they give them now, and that's it.
It was hard to get them to participate in programs. They didn't have the incentives. They knew when they were going home. So they were just what they call in bit mode. I'm just bitten. So I'm gonna involve myself in any activity that's a pleasant distraction from my time. So the cards, the gambling, the sports, the fucking watching Jerry Springer and all the talk shows.
They're coming home, living in the same community. Almost all of them go back to the exact same community they left, whether it's small town Ohio or urban city Ohio, they're coming home. Do we really want people coming home who have taken zero classes on anger management, on social control issues, on educational deficits they might have had from a very, very poor upbringing and living in a life of poverty and really horrific education? Or do we want to incentivize people to take advantage of this time that is punishment, but also a moment of rehabilitation?
I'm trying to show you what a lot of the old laws are dealing with. In this new class, these are young men who grew up without fathers, without mothers, without hugs, without Christmases.
They didn't care about programming or nothing like that, and all they cared about was getting out.
They didn't partake in the programs. The old law guys was the ones that was doing the programs, one, because we needed it, two, they was looking for some constructive way of doing time and release.
Us being who we are as far as the older guys in the actual penitentiary system, we have to be almost like the new age teachers. We're like the new age teachers because the ones that come across me, people like myself and my brother, they actually want to learn something. They actually like come up to the law library. They be like, man, I don't understand this. Be like, well, come up to the library and I'll show you what's going on. They actually want to learn once you open that door. But if nobody opens the door, they don't want to learn. They're just so happy with hanging out with their friends in here because that's who they're here with. They're here with all their friends.
A lot of the case managers, would come and get me to help facilitate their classes. And then I would relate the pieces to the guys. And then that's where I developed the whole business piece. I'm like, look, y'all getting out, man. What you gonna do when you get out? Even if you're talking about going back to do what you was gonna do, you have to sophisticate your methods because the police have become more sophisticated. You still gotta get your education, man. You gotta be educated on what you're doing.
Education, classes, incentivize better choices. We're far better off when they get out at 40 or 45 or 50 or whatever that age is, that we know they're less likely to commit another offense, to also then say, well, how can we even reinforce that? But we don't. We don't with a young man going in at 20 and he gets a 10-year sentence and he's gonna do 10 years. And he gets out at 30 and has done no classes, all he's done is gangbanged in prison.
The institution will never help anyone. If I hate to be the, you know what I mean, the bearer of bad news for some people that might end up seeing whatever it is that I'm saying, but the people who work in these penitentiaries, they literally make it hard for us.
And I've argued with prosecutors, oh, well, I'm making your streets safer. I said, yeah, for the next 6 months. He's coming home, and he's coming home more dangerous because we sent him there. That means in 6 months and 1 day, we now have a more unsafe community than we did today. That's not a good plan.
It used to be the older prisoners, the ones that they rely on to provide some stability. They just want to get their time served and get out. Then when this happened, those were the people who were really upset. And you know, fortunately, it didn't boil over, but I think it probably came close at times.
You got them so far stuck in the back of somebody's pocket that when you do finally open the door, you're going to end up with people who are lost.
And they were trying to move me to a special management housing unit, and a team came to move me. So I went on suicide watch. I just, you know, I didn't want them to jump on me. They had their they had all their gear on, and they were ready to assault me, you know, attack me, billy clubs and all that. So at the last second, I just said, put me on suicide watch.
Could the state legislature solve the problem? Of course they could. But people fail to realize that Ohio is a southern state. We just geographically happen to be located in the north. But by all sensibilities, by everything that the legislature, the very conservative legislature does routinely, Ohio is a southern state. So there's no real desire for fairness for people that are incarcerated.
It's unusual probably for anyone to think they've been treated fairly in the criminal court. But something, you know, at least, you know, that there's been a semblance of fairness, but when there's manifest unfairness, you can't really blame them for getting upset.
If you gave me the magic pen, you know, the wand, and we didn't have to run it through a process that is gonna break it somewhere in the middle, you would set up the new sentencing scheme to going forward.
I think either the legislature or the Parole Board could have solved the problem, but neither one of them, as you would say, had the political will to do it.
Our governor is, you know what I mean, he has the ability to pardon, or, you know what I mean, give people conditional pardons just to alleviate the pressure for all the old law guys. But he is like, no, I'm hands off. I'm gonna let them do what they've been doing since the 60s.
There's like 350 new crimes that were crimes back there in the early 70s or whenever that occurred. All these new crimes now, and it's just politicians trying to get reelected, got something to run on, some cliche. You know, I made it a crime to beat up little kids. Oh, you know, what a guy, I'll vote for him.
There's this unwillingness to go back and fix or balance sentences as our views change or progress.
I would want all the old laws that are in there to receive good time for the time that they've been in there, and to equalize the sentences what the new law carries.
Let's return to an indefinite model, but let's do it better. Short indefinite windows. So, like I said, the judge should be choosing between a 4 or 5 year range on a sentence, not a 15 or 20 year range.
And of course, I didn't say these are nice people. I just said you can't treat them unfair if we're going to have, a civilized society here. It can't be that unfair to them.
I would create a special judicial forum of a body of judges that would come to an agreement of moving these things through and issue written orders. This is now resentenced to X, this is now resentenced to Y.
They have administrative relations and DRC policies, or Department of Correction policies, what they're under, basically like their full board hearing, things like that. And they can change those and tweak those ARs, is all they have to do. That's all they have to do.
And fix them all. So everybody's got a new sentence, and you'd also be releasing a number of people.
Everybody's supposed to be sentenced the same. So that means that they should be treated the same all the way through, including to the release, including to their supervision and everything. But they're still not. That's where we're at.
You go to law school and you're idealistic and you think they're going to do things for the right reasons. No. But I do think being down here in the courtroom, we do things for the right reasons more often than not. When you're in the legislature, and I did have, like I say, a few years on Columbus City Council, sometimes you do things for the right reasons, but usually it's not for the reasons that you're telling the public.
I feel terrible about the everything I did. I mean, the person that committed the crimes in 1993, I don't even know that person. I mean, that really wasn't me. I gave in to peer pressure. I wanted to be accepted. I guess I didn't have the courage to stand up and go in my own direction.
It took me 18 and a half years to demonstrate my redeemability, but as I've shared with you through this, I really, after doing that last whole shot, that 13 months of solitary, gave myself to the programs, and it gave me a chance, and it helped me build some real life skill sets in there, and that's how I done my time.
Take advantage of all those programmings we've talked about. Make sure that you have a good release plan. It's not just about the behavior in prison. Where am I going to live? Who am I going to live with? What's that transitional moment back into society look like? Do I have a stable environment to go to? Is there a job opportunity in that environment? Those are really important to the board in many ways, that at least in the cases that we present to the board. I would also suggest seeking counsel for that board presentation as much as possible.
Public defenders have such big caseloads that they just don't have time for Hail Mary cases.
Keep trying to get records on your case and everything, and keep studying for that parole board as well. But it's hard to study when you get a 10-year flop.
When they gave me that 5 years of the parole board, I went back and for like a week and said, I need to map out a plan to get out of here. I'm gonna be stuck like the rest of them. And I know it's gonna take community support.
If you put people in here and you don't have anything for them to do, that's all they're going to do is talk about new crimes to do. And that's all that they're creating with this environment. Oh yeah, you go to a program. No, you can't. No, you can't. Them programs is just based upon the new law guys being able to go in and get 5 good days. That's all they're there for. They don't care about what's going on, what's being said. The only thing they want to do is get back out there and find their next fix and take something from their mom, or take something from one of their kids or their baby mom or whatever. This is so contradictory to what they call themselves saying that rehabilitation is. It's not about rehabilitation. It's not about corrections. This is human farming. They are using these people just for the purpose of gaining income so they can support these prisons. It's not about corrections. Never has been.
I want the sentences to be equalized and the guys that need to be come out, you know, have family while their family is still here.
The vast majority of people committing crimes will age out of crime. As we get older, we don't have the same lack of judgment, the same horrible choices that we make, impulsivity, lack of anger control that we did when we were 20 years old.
We're getting old and there's nowhere for us to go except for nursing homes will be next for them, a lot of them.
We got a failing health of so many people in here. We have so many people who die in Frazier every week. It's like, you know, you got at least two a week who die in this health place they got up here. And these are just old people who have been here for so long that they're just dying.
Over my journey, I dealt with and done time with a lot of Jasons. And the institution needed them because these were guys who stood against the giants and shared the truth and unflinchingly said, you know, this shit is not right. And was willing to speak truth to power in there, which is very dangerous and is always going to come at a price.
You have so many of the most talented individuals in this world, man, that are locked away because nobody took the time to bring them people in and say, you know what, you got a talent in this and I won't let you fail.
A crash gate is basically just it's a gate. It looks like the traditional bars inside of a jail, an old-fashioned jail, like a Mayberry jail. It's traditional bars, but they go up about 30, 40 feet up in the air. Came up with the idea that I was going to make a harness, and I was going to, when they let me out for child to eat, I was going to come out in the day room area, run out the block, and go up the crash gate, and tie myself up there. So I made a harness out of a mattress and some sheets and some makeshift goggles. My thinking was that they weren't going to get me down. So I actually wrote down some demands. I wanted to speak with somebody from the media, or the governor's office, or a representative, or somebody from Department of Rehabilitation and Correction Central Office. And I thought, you know, that eventually that would happen. I thought I would be able to speak to somebody because my thinking was that they weren't going to be able to get me down. When they serve our meals in the day room area of the special management housing unit, you know, they open the door stays open for about 10 seconds. So I seen a brief window of opportunity, and I ran out to the crash gate. I quickly got up the crash gate. But when I got to the top, as I was securing the harness, one of the white shirt, a sergeant or captain or somebody, he sprayed me, and at that time, you know, I was just focusing on trying not to fall, and I was trying to get rid of some of the effects of the mace wiping my face. So I improvised, I changed plans, and I wound up climbing onto an air conditioning duct. They start coming up off an elevator with mattresses. They brought a hydraulic lift up, and then, you know, after speaking with the crisis negotiator for a while, you know, I started to realize what they were doing. They were putting the mattresses down, and first I thought it was for my protection, but then an investigator, he appeared. He came out of nowhere with the it was like, I call it a paintball gun. It shoots non-lethal ammunition, but I had never got shot with it, didn't want to get shot with it, and I didn't want to, you know, risk getting shot off the air conditioning duct. And I felt that I had pretty much made my point, you know, I pretty much made my point, so it was no use to really go any farther.
Free 'em all. Percy Jones, Bam and Will Smith, Ezekiel McCarroll and Charles Nickelberry. Free 'em all. Keith Lamar, Sean and Darryl Jones, David Clark, let's get 'em back home. Free 'em all. Letitia Scott, Jerry Smiley, Andre Williams, Tango and Cash, I ain't forgetting nobody. Free 'em all. Mario Redding and Mike D, Michael Skiller Wright and Gregory Curry. Free 'em all. Derek Matthews, Hassan, Ron Grant, Jerome Brown, Robert Jones, Derek Cannon, Shaquille Julius, almost 30 in and still standing. Free 'em all. Alphonse Browns, Mike Woodland, Jerome Dixon Jr. and Donald Ray Williams from Off Woodland. Free 'em all. Anthony Pope, Reggie Ward, Charles Sten, y'all go get paid at the board. Free 'em all. Terry Little, Sean Swain, and Marlon Harshaw, I ain't forget none of your names. Free 'em all. Free Mumia. Free 'em all. Free Mumia. Free 'em all. Free Jason Goudlock. Free 'em all. Free Jason Goudlock. Free 'em all. Free Jason Goudlock. Free 'em all. Free Jason Goudlock.
A friend of mine once said, going to prison isn't nearly as scary as coming home.
A lot of guys, they want to get out of prison and get back to doing the things that they were doing, what led them to being in prison.
They think that this is okay. This is not life changing. It'll be okay. When I go in there, I'll sit in there for 2 or 3 years, and I'll come home. It'll be all right. And that ain't the case.
I never really had my own apartment. I never had a savings account.
It makes you hateful. It does. It makes you really hateful. But just so happened, like I said, I got people around me that won't allow me to become that.
I'm looking to start a publishing company, a small publishing company. I like to publish some books for prisoners.
The old law guys are the voices, but they can't be heard because the staff won't allow it.
And unfortunately, from souls like Jason, he's paying that price because he spoke out and he spoke up. But the flip side of that is that his words, his thoughts, his commentary is being read and it's awakening people. Light bulbs are coming on, candles are coming on, and attention is being brought to this. And that's a good thing. Viktor Frankl said that which is to give light must endure burning. And so he's a tough soul. He can endure that burning, but it comes at a price.
I just want to get out, get my life together, and I want to pursue some of my goals and my dreams.